Deadly shark attack shocks California coast. Surfer mauled by gigantic shark at California beach sparks closure and panic. A shocking shark attack at Big River Beach has left a 39-year-old surfer seriously injured and forced authorities to shut down the popular coastal spot for 48 hours. Now let's explore this story in detail and uncover the facts on our AI podcast.
I want you to take a second and just picture your absolute favorite outdoor spot.
Right, like a place you go to just totally unwind.
Exactly. Maybe it's a trail you hike on the weekends, or a local park where you read, or, that one stretch of beach where you go just to clear your head.
You really get to know the vibe of those places. They're predictable.
Yeah, calming. It's like you have this unspoken agreement with the landscape that you are safe there.
Right, you let your guard down.
Completely. Now, I want you to imagine that unspoken agreement being violently shattered in just a matter of seconds.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Imagine that peaceful haven instantly transforming into a primal, terrifying survival situation. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is a heavy one today.
It really is. Today, we have a stack of local news reports, witness testimonies, and marine rescue protocols right here in front of us. And our mission is to unpack a completely harrowing shark encounter.
Specifically at Big River Beach on the California coast.
Right. We are looking at an event involving a 39-year-old surfer, a massive predator, and a genuinely unbelievable story of self-rescue. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, because we aren't just looking at the attack itself here.
No, we are looking at the mechanics of human survival, the realities of emergency response, and honestly, the broader implications for a coastline that is already deeply on edge.
The sequence of events detailed in these reports really challenges our everyday assumptions, deeply.
How so?
Well, we draw these rigid boundaries between human spaces and wild ecosystems, right? But this incident proves just how porous those boundaries actually are.
Yeah, it's not a concrete wall.
Exactly. When we look at the raw data of this encounter, it completely forces a reevaluation of how we interact with the natural world.
Well, let's start with the setting, because the location is what makes the sudden violence so initially jarring.
Mendocino Headlands State Park.
Right, specifically Big River Beach. The sources highlight that this is a scenic spot usually known for peaceful waves and a steady stream of surfers.
It's a popular destination.
It is. You go there, you park your car, and you paddle out. I always think about state parks and popular beaches as these curated playgrounds.
That's a really good way to put it.
Right. We put up wooden signs, we pave the parking lots, we build restrooms.
And because of those comfortable human touches, we completely forget that these are actual untamed habitats.
We really do. We essentially domesticate the perimeter, which creates this massive psychological blind spot.
Because we control the sand in the parking lot, we just assume we have somehow tamed the water.
Like it's a giant swimming pool.
Right. We view the ocean as a backdrop for our leisure. But ecologically speaking, the surf zone is a dynamic, high-stakes hunting ground.
But, that idea of a psychological blind spot completely falls apart when you look at the physical size of this animal.
Oh, the witness descriptions are terrifying.
They are. According to the source material, this massive shark was actually visible from the shoreline before the attack even happened.
People literally saw it coming.
Onlookers saw it. One witness gave this incredibly striking description, stating the shark looked, quote, as big as a whale.
It's massive.
Which leads to an obvious, glaring question. How does a predator that is massively visible, something the size of a whale, manage to ambush someone in broad daylight?
In a spot known for a steady stream of people, no less.
Exactly. How does that happen?
What's fascinating here is the intersection of marine physics and human perception. From a biological standpoint, large predatory sharks are ambush hunters.
Even the massive ones?
Oh, especially them. And they are remarkably stealthy regardless of their mass. They utilize a mechanism called countershading.
Countershading. Okay, what is that?
So they are dark on top and light on the bottom. It isn't just about blending in. It is an active optical illusion.
Oh, wow.
Sunlight comes from above, making the top of any object in the water look lighter and the bottom look shadowed. Countershading perfectly cancels that out.
That is wild.
It effectively flattens the shark into a two-dimensional blur that is basically indistinguishable from the surrounding water column.
So even if someone on the beach sees a dark shape, the person actually in the water is completely blind to it.
Precisely. The observer on the beach has an elevated vantage point. They're cutting through the water's surface glare.
Right, they're looking down into it.
But the surfer is at sea level, dealing with that glare, the churning whitewash, and just the natural turbidity of the surf zone.
It's just a completely different visual field.
It is. But the psychological filter you mentioned earlier plays an equally vital role here.
The curated playground idea.
Exactly. When you are in a place you perceive as safe, surrounded by other people, your brain actively filters out threat cues to prevent sensory overload.
So you aren't constantly in panic mode.
Right. So if you see a shadow in the water out of the corner of your eye, your brain immediately categorizes it as a kelp bed or a seal.
It doesn't jump to whale-sized predator.
No, because accepting that reality would shatter the established context of a peaceful afternoon.
Man, and that primal reality just hits with devastating force here.
It really does.
The reports detail that the predator attacks the 39-year-old surfer, resulting in serious injuries to both of his legs.
Both legs. That is catastrophic trauma.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because the expected narrative of a massive shark attack usually involves the victim being entirely incapacitated.
Right. Usually they have to be pulled from the water.
But the victim manages to make his way out of the water completely on his own.
Which is incredible.
Witnesses called it nothing short of miraculous. And if I'm listening to this, my immediate thought is, wait, he is swimming with catastrophic leg injuries.
Yeah.
He is bleeding in the water. Isn't that ringing a dinner bell for a predator that relies on scent and vibration?
You would think so, absolutely.
How does he physically make it back without being pulled under again?
It really comes down to a combination of marine behavioral patterns and intense human biomechanics.
Okay, break that down for me.
Often, in an ambush attack of this nature, the initial strike is investigative or predatory. But the sudden, violent thrashing of a human, especially a surfer, entangled with a fiberglass board, can create sensory overload.
Like it confuses the shark.
Yes, enough for the shark to momentarily disengage.
Yeah.
It loses the element of surprise.
Okay, so the shark backs off for a second.
well-
What about the surfer?
For the human, the survival mechanism is heavily rooted in the sympathetic nervous system. Experiencing catastrophic trauma and extreme fear simultaneously triggers an intense fight-or-flight response.
Pure adrenaline.
Exactly. The brain floods the system with adrenaline and noradrenaline, which temporarily suppresses the conscious perception of pain.
Really? Just shuts the pain off.
It's a phenomenon known as stress-induced analgesia.
So he isn't necessarily feeling the full mechanical failure of his legs in that moment?
No, probably not at all.
He is just operating on pure forward momentum.
He is operating on pure physiological override. Since his legs were severely compromised, he would have had to rely entirely on his upper body strength.
Just dragging himself through the water.
Right, utilizing the buoyancy of the salt water and the forward kinetic energy of the crashing waves to push himself toward the shallows.
Wow.
The adrenaline masks the lactic acid buildup in his arms and shoulders, allowing his brain to prioritize one single critical task: reaching the sand.
But willpower and adrenaline have limits.
They absolutely do.
There is a very specific medical detail in our source that makes this unassisted escape mathematically possible.
The arterial bleeding.
Yes. The reports indicate that while the injuries to his legs were severe, they did not involve major arterial bleeding.
Which is astounding.
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me it just comes down to pure dumb luck?
Yes.
There is no biological defense mechanism kicking in there to protect the arteries. It literally just comes down to the angle of the jaw missing a vessel by a millimeter.
It is literally a matter of structural luck.
That is terrifying.
The human leg contains major blood vessels, most notably the femoral artery, which is relatively close to the surface and operates under immense hydrostatic pressure.
Right.
If a predator of that magnitude had severed the femoral artery, no amount of adrenaline or willpower would have mattered.
He wouldn't have made it.
Not at all. The victim would have experienced massive exsanguination within a matter of seconds. The resulting drop in blood pressure would have caused rapid loss of consciousness.
So he would have just passed out in the water.
Exactly. The fact that the teeth missed those major arteries meant his cardiovascular system remained pressurized just enough to fuel his upper body for that swim.
That is just wow.
It shifts the entire narrative from a standard tragic encounter to an awe-inspiring display of human resilience.
And through this incredible convergence of anatomical luck and sheer willpower, he actually makes it to the sand.
He does.
He reaches the extreme northern end of Big River Beach. Now, normally, in any survival story, reaching the shore is the exhale moment.
Right, cue the dramatic sigh of relief.
Exactly. You touch dry land, the danger is behind you. But I want to push back on that comforting assumption because the shoreline is not a magic wall.
No, it is not.
In this case, the danger was absolutely not over.
The situation actually became infinitely more complex the moment he left the water.
The sources outline this incredibly tense sequence. He hits the sand. 3 off-duty lifeguards immediately rush into action to help him.
Which is so lucky they were there.
So lucky. They are assessing his wounds. They call for a quad bike to transport him for urgent medical care. But then we get this chilling twist.
The shark.
Yes. While these rescuers are working to stabilize the victim right there in the surf and the shallows, the shark appears to return.
That is nightmare fuel.
A witness reported seeing it actively circling nearby, and the terrifying part, the lifeguards were completely unaware of the looming danger.
They had no idea.
None. Not until another bystander on the beach shouted a warning. I mean, imagine the psychological toll on those rescuers.
Oh, I can't even fathom it.
You are intensely focused on saving a life, you have your hands on a bleeding victim, only to realize you are actively being stalked by the exact same massive predator.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this moment perfectly illustrates the chaotic, inherently flawed nature of emergency triage in a wild environment.
What do you mean by flawed?
Well, what those off-duty lifeguards were experiencing is a documented physiological response called auditory and visual exclusion.
Commonly known as tunnel vision, right?
Exactly. When first responders are faced with high-stakes, critical trauma, especially one requiring immediate hemorrhage control, their sympathetic nervous system essentially hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
So their brain just zeroes in on one thing.
The brain hyper-focuses solely on the immediate threat to the patient's life, which is the bleeding. The peripheral world, including ambient sounds and movements on the horizon, simply drops away.
Because they aren't scanning the horizon, they are scanning the wounds.
Right.
It is a necessary mechanism for providing life-saving care, but it leaves them completely exposed.
It really highlights the interconnected vulnerability of everyone in that space.
The victim and the rescuers.
Yes. The victim is vulnerable due to his injuries. The rescuers are vulnerable due to their necessary hyperfocus.
So they needed someone on the outside.
It took a third party, a bystander who was physically removed from the immediate triage bubble and not experiencing that same adrenaline spike to maintain situational awareness.
They were the ones to break that tunnel vision.
Exactly. It is a stark reminder that simply stepping into the shallows does not turn off the reality of the wild environment.
The ocean does not respect the tide line as a boundary.
It really doesn't.
I look at the shoreline as an ecological border town. The rules of the ocean bleed onto the sand.
That's a great analogy.
So the bystander shouts, the immediate threat of the circling shark is managed by that warning, and the focus transitions to the logistical aftermath.
Getting him out of there.
Right. The paramedics arrive on the scene. They assess his injuries as serious but stable, which again points back to that miraculous absence of arterial bleeding.
Just unbelievable luck.
And then we look at the evacuation. The source notes that an airlift wasn't deemed essentially necessary, but a helicopter had already been dispatched to the scene.
They were already on the way.
Yeah. They used it to transport the victim to a hospital in Fort Bragg. Now, we don't have an update on his condition yet, but having a helicopter already dispatched, even if it wasn't strictly essential, feels like an incredible stroke of fortune.
Oh, absolutely.
It completely speeds up the timeline of survival.
It is a massive logistical advantage, and it really speaks to modern rural emergency medical protocols.
How does that work in these coastal areas?
In coastal environments like the Mendocino Headlands, transport time via ground ambulance can be significantly delayed. You've got winding coastal roads, tourist traffic.
Oh yeah, getting stuck behind an RV on Highway 1.
Exactly. Or just the sheer distance to a trauma center capable of handling severe tissue damage. The preemptive dispatch of an aeromedical unit is often called an auto-launch protocol.
Auto-launch,
Yeah.
so they don't even wait for the paramedics to ask for it.
Dispatchers send the helicopter the moment a high mechanism injury is reported, before the full severity of the patient is even confirmed by paramedics on the ground.
Wow, they just go.
It operates on the principle of preparing for the worst-case scenario. If they don't need it, they turn it around.
But if they do...
If they do, those saved minutes dictate whether a patient keeps a limb or loses it to secondary shock.
Right. So you see the helicopter lift off, the dust settles, and then the authorities have to step in and manage the physical environment.
Which is a whole other challenge.
They immediately close Big River Beach for 48 hours. They put up warning signs to keep surfers and swimmers out, and they launch an investigation into the circumstances of the encounter.
Standard protocol.
So what does this all mean for the local surfing community? I mean, you can't lock a gate on the ocean. What does closing a beach for 48 hours actually accomplish?
It is a vital question because, as the saying goes in marine biology,
Yes.
you cannot arrest a shark.
Right. It's not a crime scene.
You cannot cordon off a section of the ocean. These marine animals are highly migratory. A predator of that size can cover vast distances in a 48-hour period.
So it might be miles away by the next morning.
Exactly. The primary function of a beach closure isn't necessarily to trap the animal or ensure it has left the hemisphere.
What is it for then?
The closure is largely about managing the human element.
Oh, so it's about controlling us to stop us from blindly walking back into a volatile situation.
Exactly that. The 48-hour window serves several crucial functions. First, it manages public panic.
It gives everyone a second to breathe.
Right. It provides a definitive, authoritative pause that stops people from making emotional or reckless decisions. Second, it allows authorities time to assess any lingering immediate threats.
Like what?
For instance, they need to investigate if there is an unusual concentration of prey species, or perhaps a whale carcass drifting offshore that is actively drawing predators to that specific area.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to open the beach if there's a buffet right offshore.
Exactly. Finally, it gives officials time to enforce practical safety measures, distribute information, and reset the public's expectations before they re-enter the water.
It forces a psychological reset of that curated playground mentality we talked about earlier.
It reminds the public that this is a wilderness.
And that psychological reset is hitting this particular region incredibly hard right now because we have to zoom out from this isolated incident at Big River Beach and look at the broader regional mood.
It's tense.
Our sources make it very clear this coastline is already deeply on edge.
The compounding nature of tragedy in a specific geographic area can dramatically alter the collective psychology of a community.
The source actually notes a completely separate recent tragedy that was already weighing on everyone's minds.
Right, the missing swimmer.
Yeah, swimmer Erica Fox disappeared off the coast on December 24. Her body was found 6 days later near Davenport Beach.
Which is about 30 miles from where she was last seen.
Just think about what a 6-day search does to a coastal town. You have helicopters scanning the water, boats running grid patterns, and just the grueling reality of ocean currents dragging a recovery effort across 30 miles of coastline.
It's exhausting for the community.
It is. When you, as a listener or a beachgoer, hear about back-to-back events, a surfer mauled by a gigantic predator and another swimmer tragically lost just down the coast, it completely changes the lens through which you view the water.
It absolutely does.
It no longer feels like a place to catch waves. It feels like an active, hostile threat zone.
This raises an important question about how we process risk versus how we process emotion.
Okay, what do the numbers say?
Statistically speaking, shark encounters and fatal swimming accidents remain exceedingly rare when you factor in the millions of people who enter the ocean every year.
Right, rare events.
But human beings do not process the world through statistics. We process the world through narrative.
You look for patterns.
In psychology, this is related to the availability heuristic. When coastal tragedies cluster together temporally, even if the mechanisms of the tragedies are completely unrelated, like a predator attack versus a tragic drowning, it creates a profound sense of localized vulnerability.
So because they happen at the same time, we link them in our heads.
Exactly. The statistical rarity is entirely overshadowed by the visceral emotional impact of consecutive losses.
The ocean just feels like it is closing in on them. And the overarching takeaway from the authorities in the source material really reflect that tension.
What did they advise?
They state that while attacks are rare, these incidents serve as stark reminders of the ocean's unpredictable nature. Their ultimate plea to the public is to stay alert, follow advisories, and respect warnings.
Which is sound advice.
It is, but staying alert feels almost impossible when you are dealing with a predator the size of a whale that can ambush you without making a sound.
Staying alert in this context does not mean you are expected to outspot a perfectly camouflaged apex predator in turbulent water.
Because you can't.
You can't. It means cultivating a philosophy of deep, unwavering respect for the ocean's volatility. It means recognizing that the moment you step past the tide line, you are entering a wilderness over which you have absolutely no dominion.
We are just visitors.
Exactly. Following advisories and respecting warnings is the absolute baseline of acknowledging that reality. The ocean is dynamic, it is entirely indifferent to human presence, and it demands our humility.
Indifferent is the perfect word. It doesn't actively target us, but it certainly doesn't accommodate us either.
Not at all.
We have covered some incredibly intense ground today. We started with a peaceful day at Mendocino Headlands that was shattered by a massive predator hiding in plain sight.
A truly unbelievable scenario.
We unpacked the awe-inspiring biological luck of missing a major artery and the sheer physical willpower of a surfer who managed a miraculous self-rescue.
Fighting through all of that trauma.
Yeah. We looked at the terrifying reality of off-duty rescuers suffering from tunnel vision while being shattered by a circling shark, the logistical complexities of auto-launching medical helicopters.
And, of course, a coastline grappling with the compounding heavy trauma of consecutive tragedies.
It is a narrative that continually forces us to confront our own fragility.
The human drive to survive is matched only by the sheer, unyielding power of the environment we inhabit.
Which really brings me back to where we started. We love our curated playgrounds. We love treating the ocean like a massive recreational swimming pool, just a beautiful blue backdrop for our weekends.
But it's not.
No, it isn't. But if a predator as big as a whale can casually enter a space we consider our playground, remain entirely unseen until the moment it strikes, and force a life or death battle in the shallows, it leaves you with a lingering thought.
What's that?
As ocean temperatures continue to shift and marine ecosystems change, apex predators are actively altering their hunting grounds and following prey closer to shorelines. Are these rare, terrifying intrusions into our human spaces going to become the new baseline?
That is a chilling thought.
And if the wild is moving closer to our curated playgrounds, how much of our safety is real and how much is just an illusion we carry into the deep?
Okay, one question for you. What drew the gigantic shark so close to shore? And could changing ocean conditions or food scarcity be behind this terrifying attack? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.